On April 15, 1452, in the small hill town of Vinci in Italy, a child was born to two very different worlds. His father, Ser Piero, was a successful and respected businessman. His mother, Caterina, was a young peasant woman whose family name was never recorded. The child was given the name Leonardo. In time he would be remembered simply as Leonardo da Vinci, meaning Leonardo of Vinci. Leonardo's parents were not married, and in the society of the time this carried a heavy stigma. Ser Piero felt ashamed of the child and soon chose to leave him in the care of his mother. Not long after, he married a woman of higher status and began a new household in Florence. Caterina too eventually married and started a family of her own. The infant Leonardo did not remain with her long. With no place truly prepared for him, Leonardo was taken in by his father's parents. They were elderly, his grandfather already 85. They provided food, clothing and shelter, but very little affection. Within that quiet household, the one person who saw the boy with warmth and attention was his uncle, Francesco. Francesco was a farmer who loved the open hills and olive groves surrounding Vinci. He often walked the countryside, and young Leonardo followed at his side. In those hours outdoors, the natural world became Leonardo's first and deepest teacher. The shape of hills, the texture of leaves, the movement of birds, and the gentle light across the valley settled into his memory. Nature became both his refuge and his inspiration. Leonardo soon began to sketch the world around him. He carried a small notebook wherever he went, drawing plants, animals, waterfowl on a stream, insects, and livestock in the fields. Paper was expensive, yet because of Ser Piero's business connections, there was always some available. It was one of the few meaningful gifts Leonardo ever received from his father. Even as a child, he displayed a remarkable gift. The creatures he drew did not appear flat or symbolic. They appeared alive. Leonardo had an unusual sensitivity to both the beauty and the power of nature. At the age of 4, he witnessed a violent hurricane that devastated farms and claimed many lives. At 10, he watched the Arno River rise and flood Florence. The force of water, calm in one moment and destructive the next, left an impression he would explore for the rest of his life. Water, he understood, sustained life, yet it could also sweep it away. He would study it endlessly. Ser Piero must have recognized the boy's talent, but Leonardo's future was confined by circumstance. Because he was born outside of marriage, he could not attend a university. He could not become a lawyer, a merchant, or a physician. Yet there was one respected path open to him. He could become an artist. So Ser Piero took Leonardo to Florence and placed him as an apprentice in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the city's most accomplished artists. This was the turning point in Leonardo's life. It gave him training, structure, and a world in which his extraordinary gifts could grow. In the end, it was the finest decision Ser Piero ever made for his son. Florence itself provided the ideal environment for such growth. During the 1400s, it stood as one of the most influential and vibrant cities in the world. It was one of 5 independent city-states in the region that would later become Italy. Although Florence had its own form of government known as the Signoria, real authority for many years rested with a single wealthy and powerful family, the Medici. Within Florence, art was not only admired, it was woven into daily life. Workshops produced frescoes painted directly onto walls, statues carved from marble or cast in bronze, and finely crafted objects made of silver and gold. They designed everything from tableware to architectural features. Young apprentices entered these studios at the lowest level. Their early tasks were simple and humble. They swept the floors, delivered messages, and cleaned tools at the end of each day. Skill and responsibility came only with time and patience. There were no stores selling ready-made materials. Every tool and supply had to be created by hand. Apprentices learned to make their own brushes by fastening animal hair to wooden handles. Hog bristles created stiff brushes, while squirrel hair allowed for gentler work. Paints were mixed as well. The medium most commonly used was tempera, made from egg rather than oil. Oil painting had begun in the Netherlands, but it would not become common in Italy until the 1470s. Leonardo learned how to create colour itself. Blue was produced by grinding the precious stone lapis lazuli. Red came from crushed beetles. Yellow was drawn from the juice of certain berries. Artists of the period did not work on canvas, but on wooden panels. The wood first needed to be boiled to prevent cracking. It was then coated with glue and covered with a smooth white plaster called gesso. All of these steps were carried out by the apprentices long before a single stroke of paint was applied. Verrocchio's studio, where Leonardo trained, was a place of constant industry. The master and his assistants often worked on several commissions at once. Verrocchio managed the business, negotiated agreements, and determined materials and costs. Marble was more expensive than wood, and thin layers of gold leaf increased the value of any commission. Only Verrocchio's name appeared on the final work, regardless of how many hands had contributed. From an early stage, Verrocchio recognized Leonardo's remarkable ability. After mastering the fundamentals, Leonardo was invited to assist with more significant portions of each project. Many commissions were religious in nature, intended for churches. Scenes of Mary, Joseph, the infant Jesus, angels, shepherds, and the wise men were common. Patrons sometimes included themselves in these paintings, kneeling at the edge of the scene. Their presence served as both devotion and display, a sign of faith and of status. On one such commission, Verrocchio was asked to paint the baptism of Jesus. In the completed work, Jesus stands in the river as John pours water over him. Beside them, 2 angels watch. Verrocchio painted most of the piece, but Leonardo was given one of the angels to complete. The difference was unmistakable. Leonardo's angel carried a softness and quiet intelligence, a sense of life that drew the eye. In comparison, the rest of the painting appeared rigid. Verrocchio understood immediately what this meant. Leonardo possessed a gift that surpassed even the skills of his master. According to tradition, Verrocchio never picked up a paintbrush again. He continued his work as a sculptor and metalworker, but he left the art of painting to those who could carry it further. Leonardo was one of them. Even so, Leonardo did not leave the workshop immediately. He remained with Verrocchio for 13 years. During that time, he rose from apprentice to master and became a member of the Artists' Guild. Yet he chose not to establish a studio of his own. Perhaps Verrocchio's workshop felt like a place where he belonged, a familiar environment where his talent was recognized and encouraged. Verrocchio himself was known to be patient and supportive, and the 2 men were likely close. Florence in this period was a city alive with new ideas. It was also becoming a centre of learning. Before the mid-15th century, every book had to be copied by hand, often with carefully illustrated pages. Such volumes were treasured, but they required great time and labour to produce. Around 1450, Johannes Gutenberg in Germany developed the printing press, introducing movable metal type that allowed pages to be printed again and again. The first printed book was a Bible, and it was soon followed by works of philosophy, mathematics, geography, and literature. Knowledge, once limited, became widely available. The number of readers grew, and access to learning expanded. Leonardo had been taught basic reading, writing, and arithmetic during his childhood, but he hungered for far more. Because he had been born outside of marriage, he could not attend a university. Instead, he educated himself. He began collecting books, a habit that continued throughout his life. For artists, mathematics played a central role. Before the 15th century, paintings often appeared flat, lacking depth. The architect Filippo Brunelleschi discovered the principles of perspective, allowing artists to create the illusion of distance by making closer objects appear larger than those farther away. This new method required careful calculation. Leonardo mastered these principles and then refined them. He softened the edges of distant landscapes so that they seemed to blend into the horizon, just as they do in nature. He introduced gentle transitions and subtle shading. In his hands, painted scenes gained atmosphere and life. Around 1478, at about 26 years of age, Leonardo completed the Annunciation. The painting depicts the angel Gabriel telling Mary that she will give birth to Jesus. Mary is shown in clothing typical of Leonardo's own time, seated in a quiet, enclosed garden. The rolling hills behind her resemble those of the countryside around Vinci. The scene is both serene and expressive. Today, experts believe that only 13 surviving paintings can be confidently attributed to Leonardo, and 3 of those remain unfinished. This small number is not the result of idleness. Leonardo devoted great passion to planning and experimenting, but he often lost interest once a project moved into its final stages. He enjoyed invention more than completion. Patrons could also be demanding, and Leonardo did not always welcome instruction. By this time, Florence itself was changing. The Medici family faced rising opposition, and conflict in the city grew. Political plots and uncertainty filled the streets. At the age of 30, Leonardo chose to leave. He travelled north to Milan, hoping to enter the service of its ruler, Duke Ludovico Sforza, a man known for his ambition and keen interest in the arts. Milan, however, was a different world from Florence. It was known for its university and political influence, but it did not possess the same artistic vitality. Yet its ruler, Duke Ludovico Sforza, maintained a deep appreciation for art and spectacle. He enjoyed grand celebrations, elaborate pageantry, and the development of new inventions, including machines of war. In an era when the Italian city-states were frequently in conflict, a skilled designer capable of shaping both beauty and military power was highly valued. This atmosphere drew Leonardo's attention. He composed a letter describing the full range of his abilities. In it, he claimed he could design bridges, fortifications, warships, and powerful cannons. Whether the letter was actually sent remains uncertain. Another account suggests that Leonardo presented the Duke with a lute. Shaped like a horse's skull and crafted of silver, it was unusual and striking, and it required the musician to play it in reverse. Whether this story is true or not, the result is clear. Leonardo entered the service of Duke Ludovico Sforza. Leonardo moved to Milan and remained in the Duke's service for many years. He responded to every commission, whether ceremonial, practical, or experimental. When the Duke's nephew married, an extravagant celebration followed. Leonardo was placed in charge of the entertainment. He designed a theatrical performance called the Feast of Paradise. A mountain split apart on stage to reveal a model of the heavens, where actors moved slowly in the guise of planets and constellations. The 12 signs of the zodiac glowed by torchlight as the entire structure revolved. The display created a sense of quiet wonder and astonishment among those who witnessed it. Yet not all of Leonardo's work in Milan was designed to entertain. He devised improvements to the Duchess's heating system and assisted in the planning of new canals throughout the region. But one project stood above all others in ambition: a monumental bronze horse to honour the Duke's father. The Duke wanted a statue unlike any in Europe. Leonardo devoted years to studying horses in the Duke's stables. He sketched their movements, built wax models, and even dissected the remains of horses to understand muscle and bone with precision. The final design called for a horse more than 3 times the size of a living animal, standing with one front leg raised. It would require 80 tons of bronze. After 10 years of preparation, Leonardo produced a full-scale clay model 24 feet tall. People travelled from across Milan to see it. The figure dominated the courtyard, admired as both engineering feat and artistic achievement. Leonardo prepared the moulds for casting, and the Duke ordered the necessary bronze. But in 1494, war intervened. Fearing invasion from France, the bronze intended for the statue was melted down for cannon manufacture. In 1499, the French army entered Milan despite those defences. The clay horse remained in the courtyard, where soldiers destroyed it for sport. The great project was lost, reduced to fragments and memory. Near the Duke's castle stood a monastery where he planned to be buried. He requested that Leonardo paint a fresco on the dining hall wall. Leonardo chose the moment in which Jesus tells his disciples that one of them will betray him. He observed people in the streets of Milan to find natural expressions for each figure. The tableware and furnishings in the painting matched those used by the monks, creating a striking sense of realism. This work, The Last Supper, soon became one of the most admired paintings in Europe. Visitors came simply to watch Leonardo paint. Some days he worked continuously from morning until night. On others, he stood quietly before the wall without lifting a brush. At times he entered the hall, made a few careful strokes and left again. In the completed scene, Jesus sits at the centre, calm and sorrowful. The disciples react with shock and disbelief. Judas leans forward, his hand close to a small bag, his expression shadowed by what is to come. By 1497, the painting was finished and widely praised. Yet Leonardo's technique was experimental. Rather than apply paint to wet plaster, he used a mixture that allowed for slow and careful work. The surface did not endure. Soon the colours began to flake and fade. Restoration efforts over centuries have preserved what remains, but the original cannot be fully recovered. It is fortunate Leonardo did not witness its decline. During his years in Milan, Leonardo also welcomed into his household a 10-year-old boy named Giacomo, whom he called Sale, meaning rascal. Sale was mischievous and often dishonest, Leonardo noted that he ate enough for 2 boys and caused trouble for 4, yet he remained close to Leonardo throughout his life. Leonardo rarely formed lasting personal connections, and Salai may have been the closest thing he had to family. That period of stability did not last. In 1499, when French forces invaded Milan, Duke Ludovico Sforza was driven from power. He fled the city, was eventually captured, and died a prisoner in France. With the Duke gone, Leonardo's position changed overnight. In December of that year, he left Milan as well. Salai travelled with him, along with another trusted companion. For the next 16 years, Leonardo lived without a permanent home. He moved from city to city, carrying only a few possessions. Among the few things he guarded closely were his notebooks. Leonardo had begun these notebooks during his years in Milan, filling them with drawings, observations, and ideas. He continued writing in them for more than 3 decades. His intention was to create a vast encyclopedia of knowledge, a record of the workings of nature and of the human mind. Like many of his grand projects, it would never be completed. Yet the notebooks remain among the most valuable documents of the Renaissance. Their pages hold some of the most remarkable drawings ever made. It is believed that Leonardo once produced around 13,000 pages. After his death, many were scattered. Some were torn out and sold individually. Others were separated, lost, or forgotten in private collections. Over the centuries, a number of pages resurfaced. Today, about 6,000 survive. They are gathered into 10 major collections held in museums and libraries around the world. Scholars continue to search for the pages that remain missing. One of the most famous of these collections is the Codex Atlanticus, now owned by Bill Gates. It focuses on water. It contains drawings of waves, splashes, and currents. Leonardo observed motion so precisely that his drawings reveal details modern viewers can now verify only with high-speed photography. He also recorded experiments in which he studied the way water flowed, pooled, and gathered force. All of Leonardo's writing in these notebooks appears reversed, as though reflected in a mirror. This is known as mirror writing. The reason for it is still debated. Leonardo was left-handed, and writing from right to left may simply have been more comfortable. He may also have wanted to keep his work private, or to slow casual readers who might seek to copy his ideas. Water was only one of his interests. Leonardo wanted to understand light, perspective, the movement of birds, and the workings of the human body. In a single notebook, one might find sketches of wings, notes on musical harmonies, designs for weapons, and plans for canals. His curiosity moved constantly. He recorded ideas as quickly as they appeared, never limiting himself to one field. These pages reveal a mind of extraordinary depth and imagination. Leonardo was fascinated not only by machines, but by the smallest parts that made them possible. Screws, hinges, gears, and springs became subjects of careful study. Even something as simple as a door hinge, in his hands, became elegant and purposeful in design. He imagined new forms of travel over land, underwater, and through the air. His sketches include a chain-driven bicycle, a parachute, and a device resembling a submarine. One machine, drawn with a large spinning rotor, resembles the modern helicopter. Leonardo believed that one day human beings would fly. He released caged birds simply to study how they stretched their wings, lifted their bodies, and steadied themselves upon landing. He designed mechanical wings for human flight, using pulleys, cranks, and leather frames. The machines were too heavy for flight in his time, and engines had not yet been developed. The world was not ready for his designs. Yet in December 1903, nearly 4 centuries after his death, the Wright brothers made the first sustained airplane flight. Leonardo had envisioned what would one day be possible. For a time, Leonardo worked for Cesare Borgia, a powerful and feared military leader. Though Leonardo disliked war and referred to it as a disease, he accepted the work. He designed advanced weapons and siege devices because he enjoyed improving machinery. Some of these inventions seem fantastical to modern eyes. One was a massive crossbow capable of firing several large bolts at once. Another involved spinning blades mounted on a horse, intended to sweep enemies aside on the battlefield. Leonardo also believed that the human body was itself a machine, the most perfect one of all. To understand it completely, he performed dissections. This work was rare and considered disturbing in his time. Leonardo was not a physician, so the practice was technically illegal, yet he continued. He is believed to have dissected around 30 bodies. His anatomical drawings are extraordinary. They show bones, muscles, veins, and organs in minute detail. A single foot might be drawn from multiple angles, with layers peeled away to reveal the mechanics beneath. These drawings explain the body more clearly than words can describe. If the body was a machine, Leonardo reasoned, it might be possible to build an artificial one. Around 1495, he designed what may have been the world's first robot. Evidence suggests it was constructed. It appeared as a knight in armour capable of sitting upright, moving its head and lifting its arms. Once again, Leonardo had imagined a future that the world would not see for centuries. Yet Leonardo's inventive mind was only one part of his legacy. He was also one of the most extraordinary artists of the Renaissance, and he was not alone in shaping this remarkable era. Italy, in the 15th and 16th centuries, produced many great talents. Among them, the names most often spoken alongside Leonardo's were Raphael and Michelangelo. Raphael admired Leonardo deeply, studying his approach to composition and technique. Michelangelo, however, did not. He regarded Leonardo with disdain, and Leonardo returned the sentiment. The two men could not have been more different in temperament or in appearance. Michelangelo came from a comfortable background, yet he lived with little concern for cleanliness or personal presentation. He often slept on the floor of his studio. He was short in stature, his posture uneven, and his temper easily provoked. Leonardo, by contrast, was known for his grace. He dressed with care, spoke with charm, and carried himself with distinction. Despite being 27 years younger, Michelangelo rose to fame quickly, especially after completing his monumental statue of David. Leonardo claimed to be unimpressed by it, though whether he truly believed this is uncertain. Michelangelo, for his part, openly mocked Leonardo. He reminded audiences that Leonardo had abandoned his colossal horse statue, saying that the people of Milan had been foolish to believe such a work could ever be completed. Their rivalry intensified when both were commissioned to paint opposing walls in Florence's central government building. Each wall was to depict a different historic Florentine victory. The room itself was enormous. Leonardo planned a fresco nearly 60 feet wide and 24 feet tall. His design was full of movement and tension. Horses rearing, soldiers clashing, and the chaos of battle conveyed with striking realism. He wanted viewers not only to see the scene, but to feel the violence of war. To execute the work, Leonardo created a full-scale drawing known as a cartoon and transferred it to the wall. He built an adjustable scaffold to allow him to work comfortably, yet he refused to use the traditional fresco method. Instead, he attempted a new approach using oil paint dried with the help of small coal fires. The method had succeeded in his studio on a small test surface. It did not succeed here. If the fires were too close, the paint melted. If they were too distant, it refused to dry. Smoke darkened the upper portions. Lower sections streaked and ran. After 3 years of labour, the experiment failed. The wall was ruined. Michelangelo did not complete his fresco either. In 1504, he was summoned to Rome by the Pope. There, he would begin another task of extraordinary scale, painting the ceiling of the papal chapel, known today as the Sistine Chapel. The rivalry remained unresolved, but both works, even unfinished, would influence generations of artists to come. Despite these unfinished efforts, not everything in Leonardo's career ended in disappointment. There were periods when he completed his work, and what survives from his hand is remarkably few in number. Only about 10 finished paintings are widely accepted as his, yet each stands as a masterpiece of composition and subtle human expression. Around 1505, a wealthy silk merchant is believed to have asked Leonardo to paint a portrait of his wife. By then, Leonardo had told friends that painting no longer brought him satisfaction. He spoke of feeling weary of the discipline, yet whether due to financial need or a quiet curiosity about the woman herself, he accepted the commission. He worked on the portrait for many years, and unusually for him brought it to completion. The identity of the sitter is not certain. She may have been Lisa del Giocondo. Today, the painting is known to the world as the Mona Lisa. In the portrait, only the upper half of her figure is shown. Behind her lies a winding road and a distant landscape that fades into soft, mist-covered mountains. Her clothing is simple. She wears a dark dress with no jewellery, and her hair is draped by a thin, black veil. At the time, widows often wore such garments, raising questions about who she was and what story the portrait may conceal. Her hands rest gently one upon the other, painted with such precision that they appear almost real. Yet it is her expression that has captured the attention of generations. Her lips form a quiet, ambiguous smile. Her eyes appear to look beyond the viewer, towards something unseen. Her expression suggests both warmth and reserve. It invites interpretation but never reveals a final answer. The Mona Lisa is now considered the most famous painting in the world. The reasons for its fame are complex. Leonardo himself valued it greatly. He chose to keep it and carried it with him for the rest of his life. Many viewers, however, regard another of his portraits as equally striking. It is known as Young Girl with Ermine. The young woman is believed to be Cecilia Gallerani. The ermine in her arms may be a subtle play on her name, as the Greek word gale refers to the animal. Unlike the Mona Lisa, the background behind Cecilia is dark and plain. She turns her head slightly, as if reacting to something beyond the frame. Her dress is rich in colour and detail, and she wears a long strand of beads. Her expression is attentive and intelligent. Her hand holding the ermine is painted with such clarity that the viewer can almost sense the tension in her fingers. The animal appears alert as well, as though it shares her awareness. Where the Mona Lisa is serene and distant, Cecilia is vivid and present. Leonardo captured not only their likenesses, but the distinct inner lives of the two women. Young Girl with Ermine resides in Krakow, Poland. The Mona Lisa hangs in the Louvre Museum in Paris, where thousands visit daily simply to see her. Which painting holds greater beauty depends entirely on the viewer. Another of Leonardo's portraits, Ginevra da Vinci, is found in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. It is the only Leonardo painting in the United States. It is smaller than the Mona Lisa or Cecilia's portrait. The lower portion of the painting was removed at some point in history, leaving only the head and upper shoulders. Ginevra's expression is reserved, her features pale, her gaze thoughtful and distant. The effect is quiet and haunting. Each of these portraits reflects what made Leonardo unique. He did not simply paint a face, he sought to reveal the inner life of the person before him. As Leonardo's artistic reputation continued to grow, events in his personal life took a more sombre turn. In 1504, Leonardo's father, Ser Piero, died at the age of 78. He left no will, and Leonardo received none of his estate. All inheritance passed instead to Ser Piero's other children. 3 years later, in 1507, Leonardo's uncle Francesco died. Unlike the others in the family, Francesco had shown Leonardo genuine affection throughout his life. He left a will stating that everything he owned, including his land, should pass to Leonardo. But Leonardo's half-brothers and sisters contested the inheritance. The dispute moved into the courts. In the final ruling, Leonardo was granted the right to use the property during his lifetime, but ownership of the land would return to the family after his death. By this time, Leonardo was approaching 60. His health had begun to decline. He had no permanent home, and his long years of work had not yielded the material security he might have wished for. It was at this moment that a new patron stepped forward. This patron understood Leonardo's brilliance and offered him peace, comfort, and dignity. He provided Leonardo with a residence and a garden, and welcomed both Salai and Leonardo's close companion, Francesco Melzi. In return, he asked only for Leonardo's presence and conversation. This patron was King Francis I of France. His residence stood in the town of Amboise in northern France. Leonardo was given a fine brick and limestone house nearby. He brought with him his manuscripts, his notebooks, and 3 of his paintings. Among them was the Mona Lisa. A passageway connected Leonardo's home to the king's residence. Each day the king visited him. He would select a subject and ask for Leonardo's thoughts. For Francis, the privilege was not in the answers themselves, but in the experience of speaking with a man he regarded as one of the great minds of the age. Leonardo spent his final years here in quiet conversation, reflection, and study. On May 2nd, 1519, he died. One account claims that the king was present and held him in his final moments. Another suggests that Leonardo's last thoughts were of the giant horse statue he had never completed. He was buried in a chapel in Amboise. Though his life ended far from the place where it began, Leonardo's final years were marked by respect and care. And he left behind a legacy of beauty, inquiry, and imagination that continues to shape the world centuries after his passing.